Hey friends, this is Joseph Maynor. So what I want to do in this video is I want to address the issue, are there stupid people? And the answer is yes and no. And what I want to do in this video is I want to try to flesh out the nuances here of why it's yes and no. To what extent is it yes, almost everybody is stupid, including yourself, right? But then no, nobody's stupid, right? Everybody is doing what they think is best. You can have this kind of very divine feminine perspective that there are no stupid people. Or you can have a very divine masculine perspective that everybody except me is stupid. And I'm the source, I'm the divine. Okay, well, it's all stupid, right? But maybe not. And so actually, this video is more geared toward people who have been on the path for a long time, who are reintegrating the body, the heart, and we'll see. That's termed the existential, the relational, because the mind is the other part of it, which is the semantic. All right. So you have ChatGPT calls these three different registers because you don't need to know this, but over the last few weeks, I've been interacting online with spiritual communities. And one of the things that came up through a lot of discourse from ChatGPT is that we're not necessarily arguing about truth. We're coming at things from three different registers. So there's the existential register, there's the relational register, and there's the semantic register. Now notice that existential really kind of fits the word body, what we mean by body or embodiment, the existential, the human, the lived experience, the human feminine, being in the world. I've used all kinds of different terms to kind of capture this, and ChatGPT calls this very simply the existential. So when somebody is coming from the existential, that is a particular perspective and a particular stance. And then from that, we have the heart, which is the relational. So the heart is all about, can't we all just get along? There are no good and bad people. I mean, let's just make friends with everybody, right? Let's make friends with the snake that wants to take our life, or, let's make friends with orcas that want to, people don't realize orcas, they have echolocution or whatever that means, where they can communicate with each other in a pod, and they can actually eat great white sharks. Okay, let's make friends with orcas, right? Because they can bounce a ball on their nose and we can be amused until the orca decides, hey, motherfucker, right? You look more like lunch than you do like a friend. And then what do? Right? Where's your love now? Your holistic nonsense love. So it kind of turns out, okay, so before I lead to the conclusion, you guys know what the conclusion is going to be. Why do we think other people are stupid? And we're right and wrong. And what I'm going to try to do in this video is explain this. But then we have the semantic layer. So we have body, heart, mind, the semantic layer. Don't you love these people? Right? They live in this, they're not authentic at all. They're defensive. They're like nerds who don't realize they have no idea what it is to live outside of their nerdy conceptual mentality that they have. They're stuck in that. I can find different ways to point to these kinds of people, but what I realize, you can be smart and not nerdy. This is one of the reasons why I like Levi Rosman from Gotham Chess. He's really smart, but he's not nerdy. See, notice that. He's really smart, but he's not nerdy. So you can be really smart and not nerdy, right? You know, people tend to think, oh, well, chess is like a nerdy game for boring people that nobody ever heard of. No, can be very social and very fun and not at all nerdy. Not at all. And that's what I like, actually. I think that's the boon of his success, is the fact that he's like such a smart guy, but he's not nerdy at all. So, but what I'm saying is that people that are too trapped in the mind, they can learn from this. And these people oftentimes will deny that they're trapped in the mind. They'll project that onto other people. Like some of these non-duality people, just to give an example here, where they will defeat you. They will try to defeat you coming from the existential point of view with this deconstructive linguistic analysis. Well, there is no you, there's no separate self, there's no separation. It's like, really? Do you really think, okay, so but it depends on like what register you're coming from. If you're coming from the heart, if you're coming from the existential perspective, these people are going to look like non-dual lunatics to you. You're going to say to yourself, these people are fucking stupid, right? I mean, same with the people who are huffing their own farts about the fact that they're God or some other kind of thing. You're like, okay, I understand. Like, those people think that you're below them on the path, but you're actually not, right? You're above them on the path because you can see how stupid they are and they don't see it. Or they do see it, but they're corrupt, right? They want to perform. See, it's not about truth, it's about performance. And the truth may be an aspect of their performance. But it's not real authenticity, because if it was authentic, that person wouldn't need to hide behind the philosophy. See, the person wouldn't need to have the human in their shadow. Why do they have the human in their shadow? Because they're interacting in the semantic world, which is a hellscape. You know, I mean, all of these can become a hellscape. What makes it not a hellscape is when you can have these all linked together and know how to go from one to the other to the other. All right, so the existential, the relational, and the semantic. Now, notice that these correspond with body, heart, mind, right? This is not complicated. So it's not like everything is mind or everything is heart or everything is body. It's about using these pointers to be able to know what is more stupid or less stupid in a particular situation. So you don't fall into traps of listening to stupid people, including yourself. But notice too that the stupidest people, they don't acknowledge their own stupidity. It's always somebody else. They're always pointing the finger. They're fighting to preserve themselves as not being stupid. But then too, sometimes stupid people genuinely are stupid, right? If you're trying to convince me that I don't have self-sovereignty, that's stupid. I'm sorry. That's like ridiculously stupid. You have to know, like, the semantic cannot completely overpower the existential, right? Just like the existential can't completely overpower the semantic. Like, it's all well and good that somebody feels existentially true, but that doesn't prove anything on its own semantically. That's just you living your life, right? Being in the world, you're living your life. So none of these can really control the other ones. And this is actually what causes almost all of the spiritual conflict. It's not about disagreements in truth. It's about disagreements in register. See, this is what ChatGPT helped me understand. So we're a third of the way through the video, friends. I'm going to take a break. I'll come right back. Just give me 1 second. All right, friends, welcome back. So let's look at the perspective of the existential. So the existential is, this is my life. I'm not saying I'm a human. I'm not saying I'm God. This is like, what do you have to say about it? This is my life. I can't hate myself. I can't listen to people who tell me that there's something wrong with me or something. Fuck you, right? So you can see how the existential is the body. It's the human, but without the philosophical human. It's being in the world. See, this is why it's post-enlightenment, not pre-enlightenment. Like, you have to have already had like the realizations, and now you're coming back into what it means to be the body. So this is something like what I call stage mauve. It's pointed at by Zen, okay, which is spiritual embodiment. And what you're going to notice when and this is a very high stage to legitimately through lots of gain to get to on the path, which I'm reintegrating right now. So a lot of my videos right now are reintegrating what I consider to be mauve, which is Zen. And so this is like post shadow work, post teal. So I have a prior stage that I call it, but you don't need to know these labels, right? I mean, you can resonate with what I'm saying if you're here. This language that I'm spewing is just a way to organize my prior dead insights. Okay. So, but this is all about throwing all that away and just being empty, but without the philosophical implications of that, which means that you got to get away from philosophical people. You got to get away from people that want to perform and pontificate and argue. And you're not doing it to dismiss them. You're doing it because you're reintegrating the body, right? You're reintegrating being yourself. Like, imagine you went off into the Colorado mountains or something like that, and you spent a month in a little log cabin that you built yourself, right? You went out there. I'm getting a little, I love telling stories, so sometimes I go a little overboard with the stories. So I enjoy it. My humor is in telling stories, actually, which is a specific kind of humor. Otherwise, I'm not funny at all. But imagine, here's what I'm saying, for the existential, Walden, right? Walden is the perfect book for the existential, although it's written by a young man. See, the problem with Walden is it's written by a young man, but it's like that. Imagine you went off and you built some little cabin in Colorado, and you went and lived out there for 60 days. And you just focused on your life, your plans, your survival, your happiness, finances, health, relationships. And you weren't talking to anybody, so you don't give a shit about relation, and you don't give a shit about semantics. See, because those only come into play when you're in relation. Okay, and we'll talk about that. Okay, so that's the existential. That's being in the world. And when you're in that, you'll see that the relational people and the semantic people both look like lunatics to you. They look really stupid. Like the relational people, everybody should, be accepted, we're one big sort of existential community, or we're one big family. It's like, fuck you, okay? Similarly, the semantic people, right? The people who want to tell you that you're not good, you're not true, you're not a self. Everything you say is some kind of error because there's no separate self, or there's some reason why the language that you're using is just immediately rebuffed. It's like, well, don't talk to me ever again, right? If you're looking at it from the existential point of view, like what you're telling to me is that you don't listen to me. That's what you're telling me from the existential point of view. So if you're not going to listen to me and you're going to shoot me down with some philosophical mumbo jumbo, then you're not a good person for me to relate with. Okay. But it looks that way from the existential, which is the body. So now let's move to the second register, which is the relational. So from the relational perspective, the existential people look like egotistical lunatics, and the spiritual people look like philosophical lunatics. See, the relational, when you're in the relational, which is the heart, okay, the heart is actually kind of misunderstood because a lot of people want to reduce the heart to like some kind of crazy shit. No, at the end of the day, the heart is the link. It's the relational register. So we have the existential register, the relational register, and the semantic register. It's the middle one. So the relational register is about, I'm the kind of person who can get along with everybody. I'm the kind of person who's going to not let somebody like trigger me because I want to have a relationship with everybody. And I'm not concerned about the body. I'm not concerned about the mind. I'm not concerned about the human. I'm not concerned about the divine. I'm the kind of person who wants to relate with everybody. And that's the kind of energy that I want to give out into the world. So these two stupid people, it's like sitting in the aisle seat on an airplane, right? You know, you have three seats. You got the window seat. You got the aisle, you got the, it's like sitting in the middle seat, actually. So you're sitting bitch, actually, which actually isn't a bad term because it is sort of feminine. It's valuing the link over the node. But you're sitting bitch between the aisle and the window. So the aisle, in a way, is the body, and the window, in a way, is the semantic, right? The guy who's looking out the window, he's not focused on what's going on inside the plane. He's looking out the window, so he's distracted by his theories, by his imagination. Whereas the person in the aisle seat, they're focused on everything that's going on because they can see the flight attendants going up and down the aisles. They know when the drinks are coming, when the food is coming, if there is food now. With most airplanes, there's not as much as there used to be, but sometimes there is. But the relational is sitting in the middle, which is actually the shittiest place to sit on a flight almost, because you got to tolerate the guy who's on the aisle and the guy who's in the window. So that's a strange metaphor, but it makes a lot of sense right now to me anyway. It might sound like it maybe does or doesn't to you. So the relational register is all about, look, relationship is the key factor. So I don't care about your truth. I don't care about your embodiment. I don't care about your ego. I don't care about your philosophy. The reality is that you and I can relate, and we can show that we can relate. And I'm going to be a master at somebody who relates, who finds a way to relate with everything that's here. That's the kind of person I want to be. That's the space that I want to occupy. And you know what the weird thing is about this space? This is almost the rarest, probably the highest consciousness space because there's a lot of people in the existential and there's a lot of people in the semantic, but there's actually very few people in the relational. That's what a lot of people have in their shadow. So we're 2/3 of the way, well, not in their shadow necessarily, but they're not developed enough to have the relational. It's hard. It's really hard to get to the point. You got to have a lot of abundance to get to the point where you're strong in the relational. So we're 2/3 of the way through the video. I'll come back and the final third, we'll talk about the semantic. So just give me 1 second. All right, friends, welcome back. So I want to reiterate that where I got this idea of the 3 registers was I uploaded an entire thread that I participated with on an online forum. And this was the conclusion that ChatGPT actually arrived at as to the conflict. It wasn't a conflict with regard to truth. It was a conflict with regard to register. And so there's the existential register, the relational register, and the semantic register. And these strangely correspond with like body, heart, and mind. So now let's talk about the semantic register. So what does the existential register look like to the semantic register? Well, like an egotistical, delusional, mind game, corrupt, scoundrel, a dirty human. That's what the existential looks like to the semantic, to the mind. What does the relational look like to the semantic? Well, they don't have it. Let's just put it that way, right? How many semantic people do you know that have the relational? If you trigger them enough, right, they're gonna have their little ego backlash, and they're definitely not gonna be the relational. Like I said, the relational might be the highest peak on the path for this very reason. It takes a very developed person to extend out to both the existential, the relational, and the semantic, and be a source of sharing with all of these people and not focusing on their deficits. Because ultimately, if you're focused on deficit, right, you think somebody's stupid. Okay, so let's get to the semantic. Who does the semantic think is stupid? Anybody but themselves, really. They take themselves prima facie to be not stupid. And so what they have is they have the human in their shadow. So they don't realize that they actually are the stupid. This is the thing right here, guys. Pay attention to this. What these people are doing is they're not living authentically. What the semantic people, and you know what? I don't want to say this to deter anybody from going into this, because I think the semantic needs to be like exhausted, just like the relational, just like the existential. Like ideally you would exhaust all of these. And so realize that I'm coming from a perspective where I'm having to draw these battle lines to be able to tell this story. But in a way it's still a story, because the semantic is a great thing, right? Don't get me wrong. But paradoxically, the problem with the semantic is when it attacks the existential and when it attacks the relational. And so from the existential standpoint, looking at the semantic looks like somebody who doesn't have the balls to just be themselves. they have to hide behind this kind of philosophy, this kind of intellectual control or layer, this intellectual layer that they provide, whether it's some kind of God or truth or non-duality or philosophy, whatever it is. They stun other people with this philosophy when they don't agree with them. And they manipulate other people with this philosophy to it's so defensive, it's not even funny. And then, other people who attack them, they get shut down with this philosophy. But you realize this person can't just be this person without this philosophy, right? It's sad. And the reason why they have to do this is because they're, you know what? This thing is, it's like Eve eating the apple in the Garden of Eden. What they did is they decided to go the path of truth, the path of philosophy. And by doing so, this seems to really correspond a lot with that, although I don't know anything about this, but this might be some kind of weird synchronicity or something like that. But the tree of truth or the tree of knowledge, like you bit from the apple of that, and that led you into a life of hell because you can no longer just be yourself. You can no longer be relational or existential because now you're fighting with everybody who's engaged with semantic warfare going on in the semantic. And the semantic has to deny the relational and has to deny the existential, because for the semantic to go into the relation, to integrate the relational or the existential, the semantic would have to realize they're fucking stupid. And no ego wants to do that. So from each of these zones, the other zones look in part, to some extent, stupid. And these are not the same things. Just like, I'll give a good example here. Biology, chemistry, and physics are not the same, but they're all needed. So they don't have to be the same to be needed. It's the network of nodes that is needed, which is the existential, the relational, and the semantic. So it's not about what the reason why you think there are stupid people is because you're either playing around with or you're reacting to not truth, not differences in truth, but differences in register. And notice that reality will pull these together to create discussion that allows people to grow and learn. And you're kind of being used by reality in a way in your conflicts to kind of like you're the existential who's having an ego backlash against the relational or the semantic, or you're the relational who's having an ego backlash against the existential or the semantic, or you're the semantic who's having an ego backlash against the existential or the relational. But realize this is samsara. It's the stirring of the pot of possibility space. But I think if you want to become enlightened, you have to free yourself from being stuck in one of these to the exclusion of the other ones. And that's what actually opens the door for kind of a heart integration, I think, or relational integration, is when you can draw those boundaries, but then release them. But if you can't draw those boundaries, how can you release something that you never had? So in some sense, in order to have heart integration, you have to have body or embodiment, and you have to have mind or language or semantics. You have to have that. You have to have ego to be able to let the ego go. Or else, you know what? You become a stupid person who's just like a leaf floating on a tree. And that's fine. I mean, if that's what you want to do. But to me, that never was personal development, right? So personal development is my number one value and bias. Okay, friends? Hopefully this was a good video. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.